Yeah, so an internal and external locus of control are really about our understanding about where agency lies. And the individual who has an external locus of control will very often find themselves in an experience or a place of victimhood, and will present themselves and understand themselves to be disconnected from resource, and will find themselves in the position of always begging a coherent way forward that they can't seem to find. And the contrast with that is an internal locus of control inside of an individual who has clarified where their own agency lies. And another word for agency in this context is the word responsibility. People who have an internal locus of control are able to take responsibility for their lives. And you see this most strongly depicted or revealed in the lives of children, whom we don't expect or require yet, very young children, to have an internal locus of control. And what are the symptoms of a child who hasn't harnessed this yet? Well, they're very easily emotionally upheaved. They persistently experience fear and insecurity in their relationships. They're not certain about where their authority lies for their own lives. And so they spend a lot of time with flamboyant displays of emotion. And what they're doing is trying to locate who has control over this situation that we call my life. And there's a lot of tears involved in that, and there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth a lot of the time. You contrast that with someone who has an internal locus of control. They have a sense and a connection to their own agency. And they understand that they are responsible for their existence. They are the one with whom the buck stops, so far as their response to what life is asking of them goes. And people with an internal locus of control are a refreshment to be around in that sense, because you can trust them in relational terms. You can trust that they will take responsibility for their lives, their own actions, for their mistakes as well. People who have an external locus of control will be trying to allocate responsibility to everybody around them except themselves. And the everybody can sometimes take the form of institutions as well.
Listening to you talk right now, if I find myself saying, yeah, I'm operating in an external locus of control, what do I do about that?
One of the hazards in what you just described is that people who have an external locus of control very often are allergic to that notion. And it's a tricky place to find oneself, because in a lot of cases, there's a strong compulsion away from responsibility because of ways that they've experienced themselves to have been hurt. And the external locus of control is the result of early experiences of fractured trust in relationship, and the persistent quest to find people who will take care of me. And it becomes a communal matter in that sense. And so it's very often the case that people who have an external locus of control end up having to be summoned into that awareness from the outside. And that's a tricky prospect, because people can become very committed to the idea that everybody else is responsible for their own well-being. We have a culture that really is strongly aligned with that kind of posture to life for the individual. We seek institutional repair for internal problems, and that's a great symptom of external locus of control. And so it's usually an inevitable discomfort that stops somebody in their tracks. They had their last attempt at being rescued by an institution, or they had their last attempt at being rescued by an individual. Maybe it's a spousal dynamic, and the husband doesn't want to take responsibility for his emotional flamboyance in the relationship, and he feels shame about that. And maybe he finds courage by grace for the first time in his adult life to say, I did that to you, and I'm sorry. And the second that he does that, he's hopped over from one side of the ledger to the other, external locus of control to internal locus of control. He told the truth about a responsibility that he bears, that nobody else can, because it's for his own actions in his own life, and it's in relation to people that he professes to care about. And so it's usually crisis that summons this, if it hasn't all been straightened out in the course of a person's development en route into adulthood. Community becomes instrumental in that case, because the responses of community, if they're unified and if they're mature, will be for the sake of the one who's floundering in their attempts at living their lives and in their avoidance of taking responsibility. And the mature community around that individual will summon that individual into responsibility by presenting to them what they're not taking responsibility for. So community is instrumental in that case.